Okay, let's have a look at the key areas in EAP. So remember, EAP is English for academic purposes. So this is when you're teaching English in an academic form for undergraduate or postgraduate students that are generally studying in a British university. So the first thing you'll need to look at is essay writing. So this is part and parcel of university life. You may need to go back to basics, how to write introductions, how to form paragraphs, how to write conclusions. Plagiarism is quite a big thing in this country, and it's very different to other countries around the world. In some countries, I won't name any in particular, it's perfectly acceptable to copy something from a book and put it into your essay. In England, this is classed as plagiarism, which is cheating, and actually is quite serious. If students commit plagiarism at university, they can be put in front of a plagiarism committee and they can get into quite a lot of trouble. I've taught EAP for many years, and I've had students that have bought essays online and they think that the teachers aren't going to notice. When you type into the search engine the first line of your essay, you will see you can buy it for $20. So plagiarism is massively important. It's something you need to really focus on in the classroom. So a good thing to do is have examples, have a text from a book, change it a little bit and then change it completely. And even changing it a little bit can be classed as plagiarism. You've really got to use your own words in it, and this is something that really needs to be drummed in to foreign students. Moving on to academic reading. So reading can be quite difficult in a foreign language. So you've got to give them study skills and strategies how to read. So encourage them to use highlighters, to read more than once, because each time they read, they will learn something new. Talk to them about skimming and scanning, getting the gist, about critically evaluating texts. Speaking skills. So how can we introduce speaking skills into our English for academic purposes? Well, students will need to take part in seminars. So there'll be a lot of turn taking, giving opinions, expressing their ideas, maybe debating about topics and subjects, and again, expressing opinions. So students will be required to take an active role within seminars at university. So they will need a lot of practice on this in their EAP course, because they may be afraid of making mistakes. They may be in a class that is full of native speakers, so that will make it a bit more difficult for them. The passive voice. So the passive voice is often used in academic writing. So this is something you will need to look at with the students. Report writing, and this will depend on the subject that they're studying. Some students who are studying English literature and English language will have a very essay-based course, whereas if the students are studying business, for example, it might follow more report writing rather than essay writing. And then there's some subjects that will require you to write essays and reports. If that's the case, you'll need to look at the differences between report writing and essay writing, because the structure can be quite different. Academic vocabulary. So obviously how we speak generally and how we write maybe a letter to a friend is very different to the vocabulary that we should be using when we're writing essays at university level. It needs to be much more formal. So a good activity to do here is to have a very formal piece of work and a very informal piece of work. And with the informal text, get the students to make it more formal. So you'll need to spend quite a lot of time looking at the differences and formality of vocabulary. Also a good idea to have different vocabulary exercises and get the students to categorise them according to whether they're formal and we would use them in academic writing, or whether they're informal and shouldn't be used. Cohesion. So with foreign students, this is massively important. Are their sentences linked together? Do they sound right? So you'll be focusing on using linkers and conjunctions, making more complex sentences to make cohesion within their sentences. Synonyms. Encourage them to use a thesaurus, and at university level they will need to use a wide range of vocabulary. If they use the same words all the time, this will have an effect on the reader, especially in their essays. The more synonyms they use, the better they can express themselves. Study skills. Some students don't know how to study, so you will need to show them how to use a dictionary, how to use a thesaurus, how to use the internet for researching information, possibly even going to the library and choosing books that are suitable for their course. Listening. So this is quite a big thing at university. If there are foreign students and they're listening to a lecture that's maybe 2 hours long, how can they keep themselves awake and motivated and not switch off because maybe they don't understand, or the lecturer's got quite a difficult voice to understand? So you'll need to do a lot of practice in the classroom about note taking, about how to listen to information for a long period of time and be able to make notes that they can actually understand when they go home. The problem is sometimes, and this isn't just with non-native students, this is also with native students at university, they listen to a lecture, they make notes, they go home, and they have no idea what their notes mean or relate to. So encouraging them to categorise their notes can really help them. Independent research. So independent research in their own language is much easier. In another language, it's much more difficult. There is so much reading they have to do before they actually attempt to write an essay. And this can be quite daunting in English, so you'll need to encourage them with this. And then also critical thinking. So a lot of these topics are quite heavy, so try and think of interesting ways to try and help your students as much as possible. You can have fun seminars to do in the classroom. Just choose a fun topic rather than something on politics, for example. Students often get quite tired on EAP courses because there's so much to take on board in a short space of time. So encourage them as much as you can, especially with study skills.